All right, time for a quick demo of Notecard Outboard Firmware Update in action. Now, if you're watching this video without reading the project itself, that's totally fine. Just so you know, this feature is a new way of performing remote DFU operations from the outside. Well, what does that mean? Well, with traditional DFU operations, the firmware update process is controlled by the microcontroller itself. But now, the Notecard is actually controlling the firmware update process. What are the advantages of that? Well, if you brick your device, or if you want to fundamentally switch RTOSes or programming languages, complete firmware updates are possible by letting the Notecard control the process from the outside. So not internal to the microcontroller, but outside on the Notecard itself. Now in this example, it's a bit of a contrived example, but it kind of shows off a firmware update process in a more visual manner. Specifically, we've got a TFT display here that's going to show one of two images based on the firmware running on the device. So it's either going to be a Zephyr image or an Arduino image. And here is our host. This is an STM32 based microcontroller. And this feature actually is compatible with all modern STM32 and ESP32 based hosts. And here's our SD card that stores our two images. And we've got a NeoPixel strip here. And in this case, the firmware that's already on the microcontroller displays a red, green, and blue set of images, just showing off that the Notecard, that the whole system's in an idle state, that there's no active DFU action happening. So how do we go about remotely updating firmware on this device? Well, first thing we're going to do is we're going to head to NoteHub, and in NoteHub we're going to look at our device lists, and this is the device that we are going to update right now. So I'm going to head in there and head to the Host Firmware tab, and we can see that there's this button down here called Update Host Firmware. And this is a list of all of the firmware revisions that have already been created and uploaded to NoteHub. And in my case, I want to switch to the Arduino version. So I'm just going to click this update button here and confirm that. And we can check down here. Our status is now pending device sync. Let's head down to our device and see what happens. Oh, sure enough, there is the visual display of our updated firmware being downloaded to our device. And this will take a little bit of time. It's about a 100 kilobyte firmware file that has to be chunked up and downloaded over relatively low bandwidth cellular. In the meantime, we can head over to the Notecard Playground and see an active terminal that's going to show us all of the actions happening on the Notecard. So we can see that chunks are being downloaded to the device one at a time. And as they are downloaded, or once they're finished downloading, there will be a process that runs that verifies all the chunks, stitches them all back together, and then pushes the updated binary over to the host microcontroller. Once that's done, the MCU will reset and we'll have our new firmware running. And in this case, the new firmware is the exact same firmware, just referencing the Arduino instead of the Zephyr image. So I'm going to pause the video here and let this finish. So as this is being processed on the Notecard, you can see that the whole system is locked up, which is fine. It just means that it's verifying and pushing the new binary over to the host. And again, if we made a mistake and completely bricked the device, that's totally fine because we can always issue a new firmware update through NoteHub to the Notecard. All right, now it's resetting, and there we go. There's our Arduino image.